Good evening, citizens, guests, council, and staff. It is Tuesday, March 18th. This is the City Council meeting. This is a regular meeting. City Clerk, please, the roll call.
Mayor Cernanik.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Here.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Stein.
Here.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
If everyone could please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to race here, huh, Phil? Did you just coffee before you got here?
Council, any changes to the agenda to consider? Okay, we will move forward with the agenda. First up is minutes of our regular meeting of March 4th, 2014. Any substantive changes? Seeing none, those minutes are approved. We have no guest citizens nor scheduled presentations, so we'll move to the unscheduled public appearances. Unscheduled public appearances are an opportunity for any citizen to express opinions or ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern that are not part of the scheduled agenda. There is a 4-minute time limit, and you will be asked to state your name and address for the record. Generally, an immediate response should not be expected. Typically, issues are referred to city staff for follow-up information or research and reported back to council and the individual that initiated the comment or inquiry. If any citizen would like to speak during unscheduled public appearances, please complete a green citizen card, which is located on the table at the entrance to the council chambers. Please provide the green card either to the city clerk or leave it at the podium. Would anyone like to make some comments this evening?
Should be a gold card or something more Littleton color. Green sounds different, right? I'm going to make that motion.
Yes.
Gold card from now on.
Okay, and if you can move the microphone, Frank, so you can.
Good evening, City Council. Good evening, Mayor Cernanik. Once again, I'm announcing the Littleton Economic Growth Discussion Group. Yes,
Frank,
sir?
name and address, please.
Frank Atwood, 7094 South Castilla Street, Littleton, Colorado. Again, we're here discussing the Littleton Economic Growth Discussion Group, and this next Tuesday, March 25th, 10 a.m. at Bemis Library, we'll be showing the video that was originally on stage at the Alamo Theater of Urban Renewal Success Stories. I hope that as the public joins us watching it or even thinks about urban renewal success stories, the obvious question is, why is there no Littleton story? So everyone, not just those with tickets, is invited to the video recording of a special City Council meeting on urban renewal success stories. Discussion after and during the showing may focus on the following suggested questions. Why wasn't Littleton's story on stage? Is there any report or video celebrating Littleton's 32 years of riverfront authority? Is the EchoStar call center an optimum use of urban renewal and threats of eminent domain? Why has Riverfront Authority changed its name? At the original showing, public attendance was restricted and by ticket only. However, there were a large number of empty seats. This time, all of the public is invited. Come, enjoy popcorn, watch the video, and engage in discussion with other concerned Littleton citizens about urban renewal and eminent domain. Thank you very much. Hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Others? Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Breezak. I live in the 4th District. I want to comment on several, maybe 3 different items, but it all kind of revolves around the March 4th meeting, which was caucus night. And for those of us that are engaged in that process, I would encourage you to cancel your meetings in the future on caucus night. We had to make a choice. We made a choice to go to caucus. Turns out the March 4th meeting, although it was a short meeting, still was, it had an impact on the community. On March 4th, the documents were not on the website and available to me until Thursday, and it was only after I asked that I got them. So you have a meeting on March 4th, and then it's over a week before I can even get access to what happened that night at the meeting. And in looking at the documents, there was a resolution passed that gave the authority to your city attorney to settle legal suits under the threshold of $100,000 out of pocket. I would like, in answer to my question that I'll be asking in a minute, just to make it real clear, you know, most of the time I ask a question, I don't get a response. I'm asking to get a response. This past election, the voters in Littleton passed Initiative 301. There's a statement in 301 that says any final settlement or final agreement shall be decided by a majority vote in a regular meeting of the City Council. I would like to know if you're going to uphold the voters' wishes in honoring that section of 301 and how the action that you took on March 4th complies with 301 or will work in concert with 301 so that the citizens know that any legal suit that comes before this council is settled publicly. The last suggestion, because minutes, it takes so long for them to get through the process of being approved by this body, I would appreciate, and I'm sure there are others in the community that would, that if the draft minutes would be put on the website, we can see that they're draft, we know that they're draft, but they would still lend some information to the community that would be worthwhile. Tonight you just approved the minutes of March 4th, so these minutes have not even made the website yet, but yet there's been some consequential action that you took that will be 2-3 weeks old by the time it gets on the city's website for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Anyone else for public comments? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda items. First
one's a resolution also. 6A.
Yeah, we'll get to the
Okay.
With the consent agenda items, they can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Item 6A, ordinance on first reading amending Chapter 4 of Title 8 and Sections 1-6-8 and 2-3-1 and 10-5-7 of the City Code concerning trees.
Pull.
Okay. Councilmember Cole. Excuse me. Item 6B is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement regarding temporary staffing and operation of a state wildland fire engine. Item 6C is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement regarding modified call when needed staffing and operation of a state wildland fire engine. Item 6D is an ordinance on first reading amending Chapter 6 of Title I of the City Code concerning court-appointed defense counsel. Item 6E is a resolution approving the funding agreement with the Regional Transportation District for shopping cart funding. Item 6F is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement for school resource officers. And item 6G is a resolution approving the termination of an annexation agreement between the City of Littleton and Bowen Farms Incorporated. Looking for a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor. I would move that consent agenda items B, C, D, E, F, and G are approved.
Second.
Motion and second has been made. Council, are you ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Moving back to agenda item 6A, Councilmember Cole.
There were several questions, I think, that various council members raised about this, and I think it's going to come back with a couple of changes to us. Is that right?
Correct.
But I wanted to make sure.
Thank you for being present. Go ahead, Peggy.
Okay. So let me flip to the right pages here. I'm on page 14 of the packet, and so I at least want to get clarified what is going to be coming back to us, and then point out a couple others. The section, A3, in terms of when the licenses expire with the one-year limit. It's my understanding that that's going to be corrected somehow?
Correct.
Okay. Then part 5 on that same page, any issued license may be suspended or revoked by the city upon written notice to the licensee. I'm wondering why city doesn't say city manager or his designee the way other parts of this code say, just for consistency.
The reason I drafted it that way was because the appeal is taken to the city manager, and I thought it would be problematic for the city manager to issue the order and then the appeal be taken to him.
But his designee could issue, right? The order?
Correct.
So,
Well, if his designee issued the order, then the appeal would go to the city manager. We're just trying to keep some separation there.
okay, so that, as long as, I'm wanting that clarified, so thank you. Half a second till I find the next one. This is page 17 of our packet. Part G, I'll read this. In case of emergencies involving but not limited to windstorms, floods, or other natural disasters, the requirements of this section requiring a permit may be waived by the city manager or his designee. My concern is natural disasters doesn't include somebody's car or truck or an airplane or something causing damage. And it seems to me that it probably should say may rather than shall. It should say shall rather than may be waived by the manager or his designee. The reason in part is if you have to wait to get something waived and you have an immediate issue, it seems to me that you can endanger people and property. It's a minor thing, but it's, sort of minor, but natural disaster doesn't include, cars plowing into somebody's house and trees and endangering people.
May I respond to that, Mr. Mayor?
Certainly.
I agree with the wording may rather than shall, because then it's incumbent upon the city manager or his designee to waive upon the allegation that it is in fact a natural disaster. This gives the city the opportunity to disagree with the applicant or whoever that might be claiming that it is a natural disaster when it may or may not in actuality be, and it should be up to the city to make that determination.
Okay, well, that's one part of it. The other part is my more major concern. If it's not a natural disaster, but as I said, we see it on the news almost every day someplace, that a car or a truck slams into a house or tree or whatever. And if you have to take that tree out of there to not endanger people, it seems to me you shouldn't have to wait for permission to do that.
Kristen, the use of the language force majeure, would that handle?
Well, I'll note that the language actually says, in case of emergencies involving but not limited to windstorms, floods, or other natural disasters. So it gives...
No, it says or other natural disasters.
Right, but it's talking about if there's an emergency, then the city manager as designee can waive that right to a permit, which would include things like someone drives into your tree and knocks it and it's going to fall into your house. It's not just limited to natural disasters. That is included as an emergency.
The way I read the grammar, it's focusing on examples of natural disasters, and I'd like it.
But it says, but not limited to, so it could be in
Right,
fact
but still
any
in the
such.
category of natural disasters.
Can we look for this to be clarified so that at second reading we will have something that's going to stand?
Thank you. Whoops, let's see. There may be one more, let me check. On page 18, section A, method of service, there are 5 methods there, and it looks to me as though any one of those 5, any one of them, because the or is after the 4th one, could satisfy the requirement, which means if you published the order in a city's legal newspaper once a week for 3 successive weeks, an awful lot of people don't get any legal newspaper. So I think it should be worded, if it's 1, 2, or 3, or 4, then the other might be an additional option. So it's 1, 2, or 3, or 4, and this other one. I'm not saying that right.
You're saying, if I might, that you would suggest the elimination of 5, correct?
No, just that not be the only way that it might be published, because right now there are 5 choices.
So it could be 1 through 4 and possibly in addition 5?
What she's suggesting is 1 through
3, or 4.
Yeah, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but 5 has to be in conjunction with 1 to 4. We would be okay with removal of 5 because realistically we're not going to do that.
Let's just do that.
Yeah.
So we could certainly come back with
If you
5
tweak
removed.
that. Thank you.
Councilmember Beckman?
If I could go back to, on page 16845A, and that's what we were talking about, the city manager's permit. I doubt that this has been followed with any degree of regularity around the city by private owners of in the housing areas, because I think they've pruned or pulled trees out, without the knowledge of the city. It's just been something that they've done. And that's not all bad, and I understand the need to do it on the commercial areas, which are a little different than private property. But this is one that probably should be, if we're going to require the permitting, just advertise this or make this known to the greatest extent and talk about maybe the reasons why. And I would hope that we would be a little proactive, because we're concerned about diseases and we're concerned about some other things too when we look at why a tree is being pulled. So just that thought, and I think that's important, because it's one that will not be followed by people unless they feel they have a reason to. I think they just won't know about it. Just a comment. I do want to go back to on page 15, which is the section there that talks about starts in 8. It's the newly added language about marking the trucks or trailers or vehicles that it's a company. Can I know a little bit of the reason why we're doing that?
Good evening, Council. Councilman Beckman, yes, I can explain that. There are small fly-by-night companies that come into Littleton without any markings on trucks, and we aren't sure what they're doing. And as our crews and inspectors go out to look for companies that are not following our rules and don't have licenses, we don't know who they are. They're in a truck with no markings at all, and it's not unusual to see those. And they come to you and they explain, I can trim your tree or remove it at a much cheaper rate than maybe some of the other companies, and we have no way to enforce on them because we have no way to contact them. Sometimes you might end up with 4 people who don't speak English, and we have to deal with individuals like that. If they mark the vehicles, we can see a name, a phone number, an email address, or something that allows us to make contact with the company and enforce upon them the requirements that we have in the ordinance. Otherwise, you get a blank truck and a couple of people with a pickup driving around trying to do something. We don't think that's in the best interest of the customers, the citizens of Littleton, or our ability to enforce upon the violators.
Okay, thank you.
And I mean, part of the rationale for some of this while you're up here, Charlie, is we're seeing multiple diseases and infestations from various different insects that are occurring, and it's not necessarily fly-by-night. It could be, that's probably a value statement. It could be someone who's just starting that hasn't had their logo painted on their truck yet.
And may not have a license from the city or any other agency. The EAB, emerald ash borer insect, which has been found in Boulder, we expect to come beyond that area in the next several years. And we have a plan in place to alert residents of Littleton about this. However, as they've experienced in Boulder, and what we can expect to see if it comes into Littleton, is that small companies from out of state come in and try and take over some businesses, trying to do it at a much lower fee without all the registrations and licenses that are required from the city.
Okay. Thank you, Charlie. Again, this is at first reading. Looking for a motion?
I have one more.
Oh,
if I may, one question, please. And this is for the city manager, because it'll be your decision to make, or you'll at least seek help when making a decision. Is there any way we could put in here, where it does say your designee, could we say there, including an arborist? Just to be clear that an arborist may be involved on many of these decisions. I mean, some of them are going to be a no-brainer where you just got to cut something down, because as Councilman Cole mentioned.
We're removing the office of the arbor.
Right.
And we may or may not have an arborist on staff.
But
So
I would think, though, there would be times when you would want to consult one. I would just like to put it in there just as needed. Again, after a storm, I don't think you would need an arborist or anybody like that. I mean, you could, for safety reasons.
I mean, if council wants to see that, we can certainly add it. I mean, we use experts whenever we don't have the skill set within.
That'll work. I would just like to know what kind of a process that you're going to go through, not tonight, but maybe next time.
Well, I mean, if you think about traffic issues, we have a level of skill set that's available within the staff for traffic analysis, and then we hire the expert to do traffic studies for us and different things. And I would think that this is in that same area. We have a level of skill currently on staff that limits our need to go outside the city, and sometime in the future, we may or may not have that level of need. The Public Works Director Bloston spoke of diseases that come forward. There's a level of expertise that we have, and there's a level of expertise we don't have. So in that case, we will probably employ experts, consultant experts, who will come in should we have some type of disease. And I guess we do that in all aspects of our areas of purview, so I would...
That works for me,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The other point that I wanted to bring up, too, is on, I think it's page 16, under 8-4-1, -5, removal of trees. And I'm really looking at line 16 of that particular paragraph, where it does say any person on any public or private property within the city. Now, I make the assumption that that means South Suburban as well as Denver Water, Excel. Is that correct? Yes. So this is a situation where he just answered and it may not show up, be heard on TV. So that's a...
The answer was yes
Thank
to
you.
your question.
So...
And that is existing language, obviously,
Right.
that we're not changing.
I wouldn't be opposed to adding, for example, South Suburban, Denver Water, and Excel, only because there are times when at least Denver Water is a little more difficult to work with. While it does imply that indeed that's what it is, any person, but I would also like certain agencies to make sure that they have to come out, especially Denver Water, Excel, South Suburban.
Do we need to specifically mention any district, because that could be a long list, specifically indicating public as well as private ownership may be okay?
Well, it says private property. I'm not sure if some of the property that Denver Water has may be private property as well as Excel.
If the goal is to clarify that the council wishes to have identify that entities in addition to persons,
There you go. Yeah.
then if that's the will of the council, we can certainly add that in for second reading.
I would like to see that
clarify
for second reading,
language.
yes. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if you'll bear with me, I was going to reserve these comments for second reading, but now that we're picking this apart, and as it's only about an inch above Councilmember Valdez's last comments.
I don't believe I was picking it apart. I was asking for clarification to come back during the second reading. That's not picking it apart.
I apologize.
Okay?
Let me
All right.
rephrase that. As
Thank
long
you.
as a number of us have endeavored to make some comments tonight, and this follows up on conversations that I've had with staff, at the very, very bottom of page 15 and continuing on to page 16, we talked a little bit about staff, and Michael, refresh my recollection if I'm misspeaking here. Having obtained the permission of the city, this language has now been stricken, number 2, and the former number 4 has been now renumbered to number 2. And would it be consistent to remove the new number 2, the former number 4, so as to not be redundant? Am I completely blowing that?
That is correct. Essentially, making the statement that if the council is supportive of this clarification, that you have to get a permit from the city, and we minimize what those conditions are in the code. We took one line out, probably should have taken 2 lines out, and then just clarify that after whatever has happened, you still have to be responsible for the pruning and maintenance of the tree. So we would take, as Councilman Stein indicated, we would take what is currently 2 and just remove it and maybe clean it up a little bit more for second reading.
Thank you. Now I don't have to remember that for 2 more weeks.
Okay. Yes.
I have a question. Michael, when you were addressing Jerry's concern, were you suggesting that we use the word entities instead of distinguish each individual?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think anytime we can, I mean, it's kind of like city manager or designee, anytime we can be generic in the term.
Yeah.
I mean, not that Denver Water is going to change their name anytime soon, but South Suburban changed their name not too long ago, and so we want to minimize that. But the intent, as I heard it, was persons, individual, or entities. So yes.
Okay, that was what I wanted
Yep.
to hear. Okay,
We
thank
will
you.
not write the word Excel or South Suburban.
Well, we've been told a number of times for a number of years from our city attorneys that getting that specific like that paints us into a corner, and then we are exclusionary, and then when something else comes along, we don't have any, we have more liability in our standing. So I think the broader, the better on that. Okay.
I hear you.
Thank you for your comments, Council. City Manager and City Attorney, if you noted the adjustments, so if we make a general reference in motion, that will be okay? And looking for a motion.
I move that consent agenda item number 6A be approved as amended.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor.
Excuse me, wait. excuse me, if I can just clarify, we also need to establish the second hearing date, which should be part of that motion.
Okay.
The second hearing will actually be on April 15th at 6:30 p.m. in the council chambers.
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries.
Thank you, Council. We now move to Agenda Item 7A, which is an ordinance on second reading, amending Section 1-3-2 of the City Code to add definition for minutes. This is a second reading, so first questions from Council. Seeing
Just as a matter of process, would you prefer the discussion after this vote in the second, or would you?
we have opportunities both.
I have discussion after it's been seconded.
Okay, so you're waiting till the motion. This is a second reading, so there's a public hearing. Anyone looking to comment? Paul?
List, right? Mayor, she's grabbing you the roster. Sorry.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name's Paul Bingham. I live at 236 West Delaware Circle in Littleton. First, I'd like to congratulate Council Member Brinkman on being appointed by the governor to a commission. That's a pretty big deal. The minutes thing, you folks do important work here in the City Council. I think that's agreed by everybody. It's also important that your work and decisions be recorded properly, reliably, etc. Regular minutes, as they have been taken for years, serve these requirements very well. Many of us save them for future reference in paper form. We can't do that with an audio-visual thing. Written minutes are great for researching past actions of city boards and commissions. The taking of regular minutes is a very reliable process. The city clerk works hard at doing that, and they are very easily accessible. As the requirement states, they've got to be accessible to the public. They're accessible without any special equipment. Audio-visual takes not only special equipment like computers and whatnot, those computers have to be up to date. Old computers will not do that. It takes a long time to scan through them. Going through a 3-hour audio-visual for something that you're looking for in the minutes is a very time-consuming process. In comparison with that, I can go through a stack of minutes an inch high in a few minutes and find the item that I'm researching. Audio-visual minutes are less reliable than taking of regular minutes, and that was demonstrated that you folks understand that 2 weeks ago when you discussed this, or maybe it was in a study session. Anyway, that you folks decided that the city clerk would continue to take notes so that she could produce regular minutes in case the audio-visual thing didn't work, which it doesn't do sometimes. So I would, and there's a discussion about money in the amendment. The money is according to some of you folks' opinions in the past, is not a big deal. It's not, the money saved is not worth what is lost in the saving of it. I would please ask you to not pass this ordinance. The way the minutes have been taken in the past are just fine, and this would not work as well. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Paul. And my apologies that we're somewhat out of sequence in the way folks signed up. So, Norm? And I know that you
Council.
rushed here tonight to be first on the list.
That's right. I was here in the middle of the afternoon. Good evening, Council. The minutes,
Name, address.
they're on the roster,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Yep, Norm Brown.
They asked for the record, so.
I believe, isn't it, that when I put my name and address down there, isn't that sufficient then? I've been here many times. I understood by putting it down there, that would be sufficient for the record, because I believe the roster is part of the record of the public hearing. Nevertheless, Norm Brown, District 1, 6081 South Spotswood.
Thank you, Norm.
You're welcome. If I was incorrect, clarify, but some of us are less comfortable indicating that we are not at home, you will understand. In many instances, such as if none of you know, when a funeral occurs, there are people that check the obituaries and then will go to the house. So it's a difficulty I think you should consider my first approach. Anyway, many times your recordings are inadequate. There is audio interference, and if there is, in a study session, a general attempt to gain consensus because there's not a roll call, the camera does not take everyone into the shot, and you don't know who it was specifically that was saying, well, yeah, that's okay. No, I don't think so. You've done a good job sometimes, but there are obvious gaps this year where it has been impossible to discern who was voting for what. And that's an obligation, I believe, that elected officials have to their constituents, is to be clear. And audio and video recordings, what Paul said was a good point about needing special equipment, but the quality of them and intermittent nature, the planning board had a difficulty a couple weeks ago, or perhaps it was last week, where there was simply nothing available on the screen. Now, I don't know, I was watching live, and I don't know if that ended up being available later, because it was actually recorded, but it wasn't broadcast. So there are a lot of intermittent difficulties. I have gone back and reviewed, of course, I was on the planning board when it was a commission, to try to see what it was somebody said. And we have a lot of audio interference. There were times when you could almost discern what seemed to be some of the calls, I guess you'd say, radio traffic from the dispatch center. And that was problematic. I discussed that with Doug Reed, because you shouldn't be watching a meeting, a recording of a meeting, or watching it live or a recording, and be able to understand something that's going on with the dispatch center. He has a lot of equipment up there, and it's a difficult thing to monitor. But I would tell you that I don't think it's time yet, because of difficulties with recordings, to go to that as a method of keeping minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Next on the list is Pam Chadbourne.
I'm going to request the projector, so. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live at Crestline in Nevada in Littleton. I'm going to talk as fast as I can. I would like you to keep written meeting minutes. I want you to vote against the ordinance. It is a vote for transparency, accuracy, accountability, and public service. A theme. I know that you believe you understand what you think I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. And that is why written records exist. We're not the first, the second, or the 1,000th or 100,000th to discover that. So they serve the people and the city. Even one public user of written meeting minutes per week almost equally offsets the time of preparation, because we unfamiliar users take much longer to perform the task than experienced, skilled city staff do. That benefit is multiplied when the public user takes the information from the meeting minutes and uses it in products that they share with their client, their business, their neighbors, and their community. City decision makers know that their intent has been accurately recorded in clarified, unambiguous, written form that they have approved. So please vote against the ordinance. Don't make recordings the official and only record of city meetings. Preserve written meeting minutes. So why written minutes are worth the time? The process during the meeting, staff takes notes and asks questions to clear up obvious confusion. Afterward, staff cleans up the notes and edits to select major points and record decisions. That's a huge value-added step. Staff reviews the recordings for completeness and quality, and during that also corrects and improves notes as required. The verification process, so staff submits them to you, you review them, you request corrections, and you vote on them as accurately reflecting your intent and actions. Those are huge value-added steps, all of them. They should be kept, not discarded. How much time? I happen to think that 4 to 6 hours per written minutes is reasonable for this value added. But if you don't, let's consider. I've heard that shorthand helps, or why not enlist more help instead of cutting a task that supports city transparency and public accountability? A few years ago, the city closed a separate copy center and incorporated the function in the clerk's office and realized a net 1 FTE savings. So is the problem now because we cut back too far then? Why don't you just remediate by having a half-time clerk staffer? And what are these undefined additional duties that somebody has to perform? Also, the 40 to 160 hours in the ordinance is less than 1/10,000th of the time we citizens pay staff for. The time spent is not a problem worth our consideration. Recordings are not more accurate than written minutes. I reported to you last meeting that those of us who are knowledgeable and know you in 3 different instances did not agree about what we thought you said. Again, I know you believe, you understand what you think I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. The ordinance fails to include the impact on us. So it takes me a long time just to locate the right meeting. We use the meetings to produce other products. We share them with others. We are businesses, developers, lawyers, as well as citizens and constituents and taxpayers. There's a lot of advantages. They're already edited and summarized. The text is possible to scan for what you seek, and you can also spot what you didn't know you were looking for. It's non-linear, non-sequential, and non-real time. Everybody knows that real-time recordings are time sinks. It's written in clear and unambiguous terms. That's not true of speech. It's more specific, it's verified, and it's available in printed form. And you don't need a computer. 14% of households don't have internet access. And I got to get this in. So the policy question is, will Littleton provide internet access and digital devices to households that can't afford them to support public access to public process? And let me just say, consider the appearances. There's a lot of stuff coming up. And if you eliminate this that we have identified as useful to us, might not affect Michael Penny, but you folks are elected. So please consider how this appears. Thank you very much for those of you who talked to me before this meeting, as well as for this time.
Thank you, Pam. That completes the roster. If there's anyone else, Carol?
I'm Carol Breezak, and I live in the 4th District. I am opposed to the action before you this evening to change the definition of the word minutes. You're not really changing the definition of the word, but you're giving the word minutes 2 different meanings. Minutes are not video recordings, and saying so does not make it so. According to Black's Law Dictionary, the definition of minutes is memoranda or notes of a transaction, proceeding, or meeting. In parliamentary rules, you can dispense with the reading of the minutes. Minutes are the instant written record of a meeting or a hearing. This is not Black's, this is another definition. That definition goes on to say minutes may be created during the meeting by a typist or a court reporter. Alternatively, the meeting can be audio recorded, video recorded, with minutes prepared later. If councils start making up definitions to words that the general public already knows and understands, then government becomes useless to the citizens. We will be forever wondering what the definition of is. To eliminate the written minutes is a great disservice to the community. If you've ever researched a city matter, you know that it's much easier to locate the minutes and visually scan them for what you're looking for. Several meetings worth of minutes can be reviewed before the computer ever gets you to the page where you can select the meeting you might be interested in knowing more about. To justify the change based on the expense of the production of minutes is not a good reason to disenfranchise a segment of the community that does not own a computer, are computer illiterate, or just has no desire to get their information by watching a DVD or video online. They prefer the written word. Section 31 of the Charter says the city clerk shall keep a journal of council proceedings which shall be open to the public at all times. A journal is a book. How will the clerk fulfill the obligation of having the record open to the public at all times? How does a video recording available to you on the internet fulfill the obligation of City Code 10-11-3 that requires, this is at a rezoning matter, all evidence and testimony presented shall be considered by the board in reaching its decision. Minute shall state the grounds for each decision and shall indicate the name of the maker and the second of the motion and the vote of each motion. How does this inform the citizens in the meeting? The written minutes are imperative in an instance such as this. Government exists to serve citizens. Better to have an official written minute for all citizens to read rather than force a number of citizens to access a video and come to their own conclusion. Can you imagine having to watch videos of our state and federal government to get an answer to a question that could be accessed much easier by reading their written daily journal? There are times, and we saw one recently, where the council members didn't even know what they had decided. The written minutes would take the guesswork out of the equation. Right now, you read the minutes before they are approved. I would expect you to do the same when you're voting on a video record. You need to know how to vote. You can only know that by reviewing the recording itself. Was it good enough? Even tonight, Randy has not been speaking in his microphone. I can't hear what he's saying where I'm sitting. Are you going to vote the way the clerk tells you to vote, or are you going to view the audio recording to make sure it's sufficient and adequate? If the desire is to save time and money, then solve that problem. Look at what you might do differently. There's a lot of conversation spoken at the meetings that does not need to be in the minutes. Revise the format of the minutes and eliminate the reports for a start. Perhaps you need to invest in a voice recognition equipment that would provide a written record of the meetings. The point is, there are other options to consider other than eliminating the written minutes and cease with the historical minutes that Littleton has kept since 1959. I would say a time-honored practice well worth the time and expense. Technology changes, but the written word can always be read. Written minutes are an obligation government has to the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Again, we completed the roster as well as open edition. Any additional comments from the public? Seeing none, the public meeting is closed.
Public hearing.
Public hearing is closed. Council, discussion.
A motion first? You want a motion in a second?
Well, you wanted to have discussion
I've
first?
had discussion.
4 motions.
Yeah. I think that written minutes are a real important step in the process that we do as a council. We have an agenda. We follow specific rules about resolutions and ordinances, and we take votes, and we are accountable for our votes. And part of that process is to document those votes and those actions, as well as any staff directions or issues that arise. And then at the following meeting to approve that as a correct rendition of how the previous meeting had occurred. I think that's a process that is part of what we do as electeds, and I see that we would be losing a very important thing were we to no longer have written minutes to refer to and do that process. I think that the problem of saying that any of our meetings would be dependent on technology, I think is a very iffy thing anyway. I just don't think the technology is there at this point in our system here in the city. It may be in other cities or in other meetings, but the technology really doesn't do it for us. totally here. There's just times it doesn't work and times it doesn't do things. And then just finally, I've got some personal experience in this. As an example, tonight we moved to have an agreement with the Littleton School District regarding school resource officers. I know in my previous work with the city, I had to research back years of minutes to find issues about school resource officers, very timely. And it was the written minutes that I could go to and decide when the school district and the city had come to those agreements. I don't know how I would have done that were I to have to depend on anything except written minutes. So I can see from my personal experience a real other issue involved that may involve a lot more time than the preparation of the minutes to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Brinkman.
I think that there's a value to having a version of the minutes. I think action minutes are appropriate. The number of the public that came down indicated that it seemed to me one of their primary concerns was who voted or how people voted, who made the motion, who made the second. Action minutes would contain that. I think we have to face a real reality that the time commitment, and it isn't about the money, in my opinion, it really is about the time commitment made on doing these minutes and the fact that the whole thing, we've spent a lot of money videotaping them, and so we have the record of the minutes. I think that the city clerk has spent probably above and beyond what would be necessary on the minutes with extreme detail, and that has been, we've cut that back and we've cut it back again in order to be able to help free up some of her time on that, and we continue to still, the time to do it is enormous. And I continually refer back to the video. The public, the council, we are always saying that we went back and checked the video to see what was said. So the video is becoming an integral part of how we go back and reference and we look. The agendas are on there. The agendas are on Granicus. You can look at the agenda and see what was on that meeting and go back into and find it that way. You don't have to watch every video. I think the technology's there. We may not have it perfect. I think action minutes would fill in where there may be an issue. We've also talked about redundancies. We've also talked about improving the technology, and all of those things are things that we need to do and we should do. We continue to get requests from the community about videotaping meetings, not taking minutes at meetings, but videotaping the Charter Review Committee. They're not asking us to take minutes of these meetings, they're asking us to videotape. So I think there is a need out there, or there is a desire to have, to resource the actions of meetings via video. And we also do, it was interesting, the statistic that the 14% don't have internet access. I'm surprised it's so small, I thought it might be higher. And we do provide internet access at Bemis and computers. So there's an opportunity there. We're also, there are a number of places around the community where there are accesses to computers, a number of the churches. The other thing is, I think that one of the things that technology has done is you often hear that people are misinterpreting emails and texting. And emails and texting are written documents, and people are misinterpreting the intention or what someone was trying to say, and things are getting misunderstood and issues are coming. The face-to-face, the one-on-one, the voice-to-voice is by many the way that you avoid those, hence the video. One of the speakers this evening said that you may not understand what I said, or think that the way Pam said it, Pam, I can't quote it exactly, but I think that it is the actual video, the record, the recorded record of that gives the facial expressions, the tonal, and that provides the entire meaning and intent of what that conversation was. So I am fine with going to a video record of the minutes, but I would like to see a action minute record also.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Councilmember Brinkman on that. I was going to suggest as well the agendas are out there and can be linked to a given meeting with access to the video, and then certainly even beyond Bemis, if somebody is really uncomfortable with a computer, I assume they can come into the clerk's office and we could provide some level of access and help somebody locate something if that were necessary or, appropriate. I guess, want to ask, what do you guys have, does staff have any visibility to maybe are there other communities that have engaged in this kind of an approach, and what has been their experience with it? Do we have any feel for that?
I don't know that in Colorado there are other jurisdictions that are doing it, but in Ohio, for example, they specifically talk in their statutes about any means available, and actually the Colorado revised statutes allow councils to specify how they want their proceedings recorded, but like the Ohio statute specifically talks about audio and video recording, but I don't know of any communities in Colorado that are doing this.
Okay.
And if I could add on, Mayor, I think that we're in that evolution stage, and what we're proposing this evening is probably on the front end of that. There is software out there, we don't currently own it, that will allow you to do verbal searches within, audio searches within video. Not new, it's gotten better over the years. And then you can get it transcribed. And so what Councilman Brinkman had suggested is probably a good compromise in that combination, if that's the desire where you go, because you've already directed us, as I think actually Councilman Brinkman had stated, we've cut those minutes down and we're continuing to try to refine them basically down to those action minutes that she spoke of. And maybe that's the stepping stone while we get the additional software and search it through and make sure that it meets the needs of being able to search it beyond just being able to click from the agenda into that section within the video for it. But that technology does exist out there. And again, to Councilman Beckman's comment, I think we don't currently have it. I would rely on technology right now. If the computer dies, we don't have minutes. So it's just your definition of where we are within this. And what we're proposing is on the front end, and definitions of what minutes are, and we had a different definition of the word mouse 20 years ago. So it all evolves, and it's a question of what do you think is the most appropriate given public access, our staff time and needs and all of that. So anyway, just wanted to add that on. The technology is certainly there.
Okay. And I guess I was going to add, I thought Norm Brown made some fair points in terms of, if we do have gaps, if there are, how did you say it? Well, let me find my note here. Well, let's see. Yeah, let's go to the audio tape. I was looking for, interference was the word I was looking for. But, if that's in there, or if we're not panning in a study session effectively, then I think it's incumbent upon us to correct either the equipment, the software, or our processes in deference, if we go this route, in deference to the process, to make sure that we're accurately capturing the information that we're intending, that is in fact public, and that's quid pro quo. However, I think staff's recommending or indicating that there could be 40 to, I think the memo said 150 hours per week of freed up time for other projects. So I guess the economics of it, in my sense or in my mind, end up being that if we can capture the essence of the meetings at a high level and essentially provide somewhere in the 1 to 3.5 staff FTE positions per week, or 1 to 3 staff positions incremental in terms of freed up time, that the prudent use of taxpayers' dollars broadly for the majority of the community says we ought to take a shot at doing that. I think the technology is, it's absolutely appropriate for us to be looking at technology applications going forward. It's the way of the world. There's plenty of things that we do today that we didn't do 5 years ago. There'll be plenty more in 5 years that we aren't doing today. And in that respect, I think it's worth taking a shot trying this. If it works, great, we keep going. And if it turns out to be something that's less tenable than we're thinking, we can always backtrack and go backwards with minimal penalties. So I'm in favor of it.
Looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, excuse me. Councilmember
So I think really good points have been made. I'm concerned with change in technology, which sometimes changes pretty fast, as in like 5 years, something that you had is no longer compatible. I'm concerned with the quality of audio in the video. So I have a question before I make a couple more comments. Is someone going to be watching the video through to make sure that everything is absolutely clear before we approve the minutes?
So the way I had envisioned this happening was, as we're being recorded, I think it's Doug up there, is watching the video to make sure that it's coming across. But the way I'd envision it coming back to you then at the next meeting is that the city clerk would affirm that we had reviewed the entire video and that the video is a full and complete and accurate record of the proceedings, and that there were not any malfunctions in the video audio portions of the tape. And then you would move to approve that video as the minutes based on her certification to that.
So, but that little part you just read, does that mean that you can clearly hear the whole thing? I mean, that there aren't little segments? Because sometimes I have watched probably 8 times a 2-minute segment to try to hear what the devil was said.
Well, I mean, I guess it would depend on what it was, because the minutes aren't capturing all 3 hours of the meeting either. So if it's a vote or a motion, then it would be meaningful, and that would be a problem. But if it's just side comments, then I'm not sure that it would impact her ability to certify that it was a full and complete accurate record.
Well, I remember now, so it just as an aside that relates to this, but when we had the Alta Aspen Grove issue come to us, and it came twice within the last, 6 months, there were no video. Mm-hmm. We fortunately had quite detailed minutes to look at, and that was really, really helpful. If we go to action only, we won't have some of the rationale that was really important, in 2007, to guide us in part with the recent revisiting of that. So those are some of my concerns with this.
We would have the video, though, to go and look at the rationale.
We did not have a video.
But we would now.
Well, assuming technology didn't change and we could still get it. And those, even though that was videoed, it's never, as my understanding, going to be put on the put online, because there just isn't time for the person to put those online. Mm. So those are some of my concerns. But in terms of what was already said, I don't want just action minutes, but I would like at least action minutes that would include, if council members have a report or staff have a report, it would mention the name and what the report was on. If citizens come and speak during unscheduled public appearances, it would give their name and the topic they spoke on, so that it would be in a bit of a sense of, I think, a table of contents or whatever to things that aren't motions or whatever.
Mayor, if I may, the conversation about minutes is separate from the motion or the discussion on the floor, because if the desire is to have minutes of any kind, then we'd ask that you kill this ordinance, because you can't have both. The legal proceeding are minutes, and so if the council wants any kind of written, then why don't you vote no on the motion, on the ordinance, and then if we can have a separate conversation about what those minutes ultimately look like. But the motion or the ordinance before you is to make the video the legal proceeding, and so you can't have the combination in there. So I would
Don't quite have a motion.
No, I know,
before us yet.
but if
So
but a couple
okay.
folks have commented on action minutes, which is a separate conversation from the agenda item this evening.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, so my questions are probably on your comments here, which is if we're looking for a journal of action items to be captured in written form to supplement the recorded minutes.
That's already required by the charter and identified, and the journal is in there.
Okay, and then minutes when they come to council for approval, that the city clerk or other city staff will have certified that indeed the recording is full and complete.
That is what is proposed this evening, yes.
Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion.
I have a
comment.
Not astonishingly a comment. So I have a slightly different recollection of my history than did Councilmember Beckman in his review of previous documents and minutes when we, in fact, if I'm not misstating or misremembering, didn't have video recordings. Many of you who are on council may remember that prior to my time here, I had a particular interest in a particular application and spent a lot of time reviewing the record, both the written minutes and the video. And it was my distinct impression that when I was really trying to grasp each and every word, as well as the nuance behind the words of the representations that were made by the applicant, they were not in the written minutes. There was a passing comment, I almost want to say a throwaway comment of the applicant referred to this or the referenced that or whatever, and so those were completely useless to me. However, I went to the video record, which was available from 2 years ago, and was able to transcribe, and it perhaps was a little painstaking. I had to play it 2 or 3 times because it was an entire paragraph, but I wanted each and every word exactly as it was stated. That is, I don't believe, possible for any human being, no matter how hard our city clerk works, to transcribe each and every word. And the only way we're going to get an absolute accurate representation is through the video. We've heard comments tonight about transparency and stuff like that. To me, that is, in fact, the most transparent method whereby we can deliver the information to our residents and for future researchers, because there can never be an inference of a colored event or an impressionable event, or the city clerk might have misinterpreted a comment or a question. And so I think that, in fact, what we are talking about is the most reliable and the most accurate of all possible ways that the minutes can be taken. I would finally say that we as a city have to always do a cost-benefit analysis of each and every decision that we make, and in a vacuum, if we had the luxury of the money in the budget to do everything that we wanted in the city, to repave every street, to hire more policemen, to hire more firemen, then I think this should be on the list somewhere. But as we have to make decisions and allocate resources, I think that the cost is too high and the benefit is too low. the inverse of which I believe what we're already doing with video, and we can continue to refine that as technology, which may already be available, and I understand that the staff is looking into that as we speak, may make that very practical. So I'm quite supportive of what I believe is a superior record rather than an inferior one.
Thank you. Yes.
Before the motion, if I may. Yes. Cool. Well, I think videoing the movie, obviously, that's the exact record of the meeting. And it'll definitely save the city clerk, what I think it said 40 to 150 hours per month, or as an estimate. And we recently, at least last year, we spent, $60,000 upgrading the system. But yet, when I go home and watch a meeting, there's rarely is there a meeting where there's a segment where you don't hear everything. In fact, when I was watching Planning Commission the other night, there was a question asked by one of the commissioners, and an answer did come from somebody sitting back behind the mics, but the answer was never restated, so that was lost. And I realize minutes are very brief, and maybe it's intended to be that way, but one thing that the minutes do is they keep a record of votes. They keep a record of a consensus. They do also state or give maybe it's not exact quote, but it will state when a commissioner or other board member makes a question. It will give the question as well as the response, as if it's in a written form. But with our technology right now, it's just not ready for it. I think we're not that far away from it. I would like to keep this under consideration for maybe next budget or something like that. But I think right now, where it's a great idea, but its time is not here yet. We have too many things that are skips if we just went just to that. And as far as if the computer went down right now, I would hope someone could pick up a piece of paper and a pen and start recording what is being said. So while I appreciate if the computer goes down, it is an inconvenience, but I think we still have ways of dealing with that. So I think if this ordinance says that we cannot have a concurrent minutes of some sort as far as votes, questions, and answers, then this ordinance should not pass. So,
thank you. Motion, please.
Okay. I just want a point of clarification. Michael, you're saying that action minutes are not possible with this motion?
If you would like staff to just take action minutes, then we wouldn't need to address the definition of minutes, because we take minutes now, and we can simply begin taking action minutes, and that we wouldn't need any sort of code revision to do that.
So we'd continue to videotape just like we do now? Okay.
Yes.
Then if I may, then the conversation would become around, what do you want to see for those minutes? If there's a desire to have that conversation, or if, as we wean it down, you can let us know, okay, you've weaned it enough over time, and we can just kind of play with what that is, because we always do have the video. So the ordinance before you would eliminate minutes. The journal would be there, which would identify what the motion was and the votes of all 7 of you, and that journal would continue because it's required by the charter. But there would be nothing else other than what Kristen had identified of the certification by the city clerk, so that you knew that the video was indeed its full and complete recording. If that were not the case, then she would have generated some level of action minutes from the general notes that she's taking, or the segments of video that she had watched. So, yeah, this would replace completely that definition of minutes. So.
Okay, so the journal records motion, second, and vote? Okay. Okay. I move the ordinance amending Section 1-3-2 of the City Code to add a new definition for minutes be approved on second reading.
Second.
Okay. Motion and second. Opportunity for still yet discussion. Councilmember Valdez.
One of the statements I left out, that whenever you go back and watch and listen to the study sessions, the audio portion especially is not the greatest. It's definitely not consistent. And again, and that's after we just upgraded about $60,000 worth. If we don't have a written record of things, so much is going to be lost. And while I do see that it's a time coming, again, it's just not here yet. When we go in that room and have our study sessions, there's so much is lost in the audio, whether it's Councilman Cole speaking, although that mic recently has helped out a lot, but there's others who are sitting back from their chair and you can't always hear what the heck it is they're saying. So that's what I'm talking about right now, you know?
Can't hear you, you're not talking.
But that happens constantly. So that's my point. Thank you.
In that respect, I wanted to ask staff, did I correctly understand that in the event that there is some degree of difficulty with the video, we've talked about triple redundancies and the storage and stuff like that, and that could be expanded, I suppose, to fit with Councilmember Valdez's concern, that the city clerk continues to take notes at both study sessions and at regular meetings, and that in the event that there is a failure of the video record, that the written minutes would supplement in the event of such failure. So that would, to me, would be the solution for the problem that he described.
Yes. Since it was directed toward my question and concern, that does not address my concern. All that does is still have somebody have to go back and look at every second of every video. That would definitely not address my concern.
Okay.
And the answer to Councilmember Stein's question is yes, that's identified in the ordinance. And ultimately, depending upon the level of minutes captured, it might be a short, much more action-focused, because again, the journal is required by the charter of what the motion was and the ayes and the nays on that. And so minimum you're going to get that. The level of discussion would be the level of minutes that are there. But it would be, as we're moving toward action minutes now, that's what would be anticipated should the video fail, or audio.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brinkman.
I think we need to keep clear what we're doing now versus what we're suggesting, and the fact that currently we are not taking verbatim minutes. So if there's a conversation going on in a study session, and Wendy takes even lesser minutes for a study session than she does for a regular meeting, if there's a conversation going on, that entire conversation is not captured. So the gist of it is mentioned, but then if you're watching the video and it's a 20-minute conversation, then if there's 2 or 3 minutes of video that drop out of it, you're still getting 18 minutes of conversation, and you are not getting that in the minutes. The same thing with our council meetings. So we're not transcribing the video into these minutes as it is. I just wanted to make that point.
Okay. Thank you. Other comments? Yes.
In preparation for this evening, I went to the internet and Googled minutes and looked at different varieties of how minutes are prepared, and there is no real standard out there. There's a lot of suggestions. So what we're discussing tonight is to give a specific definition of minutes, and that's all we're doing. So all the other discussions about process could go in, disappear, or they could be implemented or whatever, but that's not really what we're doing. We're making a definition for minutes. So I just bring council's direction back to if that's our desire. But the question I have is, several times we referred to a journal. I've never seen the journal. So I don't know that journal is something that I could live with or not live with based on the process discussions. But again, we're talking only about this definition.
Well, I would just point out, part of this is, it states in the ordinance if a video record is not taken of such meeting due to the malfunction of or otherwise, then the term minutes shall mean written minutes. So we are indicating that there must be a process if that video isn't working. So there's a little bit of definition in there, Councilman.
And, just my closing comments on this is, one, the journal and the recording of the votes is required to be to be taken, and that is separate from the minutes, and it actually exists separate from our minutes anyway. So that will continue. So the comment about knowing what yes and no votes, that's going to be accessible. And then with the clarification from the city manager, but it was also my understanding, is that there would be a certification, that's probably in quotes, but it would come from the city clerk that indeed the video recorded minutes are full and complete and represent the meeting that's there. With that, I truly do think that that's more accurate. And looking through some things and having gone back, I'm looking at the technology, and it's come pretty far. And there is an indexing of the minutes, so you would have the agenda as well as the indexing of the minutes. That's what occurs, or the indexing of the recording. There would always be, as far as process, because of its requirement here, is if there's a malfunction that's noted, it may be noted later, that there would have been a parallel of notes that would be taken, that would be allowed to fill in and to cover any malfunction that might occur. So with that, I know change is sometimes difficult as we move into this, but we no longer have horses pulling our fire engines, so it's always a challenge. So with that, council ready to vote? And I should state the motion again. It's motion 7A. This is on second reading, and it's a definition of minutes going to the recording of those and the video recording, and there will be a process along with that. Thank you.
The vote is 4 in favor, with Councilmember Cole, Councilmember Beckman, and Councilmember Valdez voting no. The motion carries 4-3.
Thank you, Council. And absent anything else, we move to comments and reports. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to let you know that Becky Mochin has started as our Manager of Communications, Events, and Marketing. May not be in that order. I think events is last, actually, but she's been on board since, get your light on there, Mayor, since March 10th, and she's already hit the ground running. We are working on Western Welcome Week type things, meeting with the downtown merchants, setting up a meeting with Hudson Gardens, and looking at how we can partner with them differently. So she's been doing a great job. Per the focus area that the council discussed as part of the two-year goal setting process, we will be presenting next month our first quarterly report on the 5-year revenue and expenditure projections. So finance has been working on that.
Michael, you're not being heard by several people back here.
I'm not.
No, so I guess you
reading
need
my
to
notes.
boom more.
I will boom more. We are, as I think council is aware, we're scheduling coffees with council with 2 of you at a time throughout the city once a month for the next many moons. And we have scheduled the outreach meetings and sent that out to you as well. Both the coffees and the outreach meetings will be put on the internet as well as posted at the locations as we determine where those are. And I think that's all I've got this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Stein.
I'd like to thank Councilmember Stallman for his very helpful notes with regard to the many meetings that we attended while we were in Washington, D.C. for approximately 5 or 6 days. My further summary of the events is that although there may be some agreement or disagreement about the dysfunctionality of this city and its council, we are on our game compared to Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Councilmember Stein. Councilmember Brinkman.
No comment.
Councilmember Valdez.
I was here last week. I got to get up and go to work every day. So I do have a question on the planning board. They've had 6 scheduled meetings, but yet they've only had, I think, 2 meetings all year. Everything else was canceled. Are they still on target to work on the comp plan at all?
The sub-area plans, yes. They're actually going to be, there's a study session coming up with them in April, second study session in April, where you guys are going to be talking about specifically the Urban Land Institute Technical Committee that's going to be coming in for the RTD lot, but at that time also be talking about the public process for the sub-area plans as well.
Yeah, because even their next meeting is counciled, has been canceled. It just seems like there's still something they could be working on in the comp plan. I mean, it's a big deal, and this is why it's taken us 20-some years to redo it, is because instead of having meetings, we just cancel the meeting. So I would like to see a little more activity going on that. And also, last meeting, we had voted on the resolution that granted the settlement authority to the city attorney. And after that meeting, and I did vote for that, but after the meeting, I did go back and I did read the 301 that the 73% of our citizens had voted for. And after reading 301, and not even have that come up during our discussion, I would have voted against granting the authority to the city attorney. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Stallman.
Thank you. Two items for under the category of forewarned is forearmed. The second one will be a smidge long. But I did attend the library board meeting.
Looking at
nobody in particular, just the camera. I did attend the library board.
The rest of us, please.
What's that?
The rest of us, please.
Yes. The library board meeting on March 5th was good. There was a very good presentation on the library's efforts to provide some additional interactive, what's referred to as STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and management functionality in the youth center, or the area upstairs that they've got that we toured. And it was sort of a hands-on presentation. I forget the fellow's name that presented. I think it was Mark, but it was very well done, and there's some very cool capabilities over there. And I can favorably report again that no books were banned or burned by the committee, so another good meeting. Today, it was a pleasure to attend the Fire Partners meeting. Now, this was sort of about a quarterly meeting that we have with the district and the ranch executive directors and some sort of the board chairs. The chief was there, and city manager and myself attended. I'll just paraphrase this because there was a lot of ground covered, but the standards of cover kickoff meeting with ESCI is now underway, has been accomplished. They're in the process of prepping up docs, information statistics, and the expected completion of that activity is still on track for early August. The next meeting with the chief and the ESCI organization is the 31st of March. He's going to provide, he being the chief, regular updates to us as the process proceeds. There was a good discussion of the transitional response vehicle concept, which is in consideration. And again, this is a vehicle, call it a Ford Explorer, that's being outfitted to provide basic life service as opposed to advanced life service. We'll be staffed with a nurse practitioner that we're working to partner with Littleton Hospital, for example, to pay for the staffing person, as well as a paramedic, and it would provide mid-level care above paramedic care for what they refer to as low acuity calls or local patient follow-on care, more often than not, or more likely than not, to some of the seniors in the senior care center, people that tend to end up calling for emergency transport on something of a frequent basis. There's some incentives for Littleton Hospital to help fund this, and the timing appears to be right, and this is a process or a project or a function that's becoming more and more common amongst fire departments nationally. There's a number of instances where these have been implemented, and we're going to get some additional feedback in terms of the response and the feedback in terms of success rates. It would be a new service delivery model for Littleton Fire and Rescue, and there will be some corollary issues. For example, dispatch protocols. you wouldn't probably roll what's referred to as a TRV as Code 3. It would probably be out in the community, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be on site in accordance with the stipulated contractual response times criteria. So then the contract needs to be adjusted to reflect that fact, because you'd want to carve those out of the response time requirements, so forth and so on. A lot of details, but I want to give you guys enough flavor for it so you sort of have some understanding of what's going on. We also talked about billing for services, cost recovery, patient navigation attributes in terms of this isn't intended to be a long-term treatment, but a replacement for rolling emergency EMT vehicles. Next item was overtime. The chief is reporting that overtime is being well controlled this year. We had a good discussion about that, but a lot of it centers on pipeline staffing and planning to fill open slots presently, as well as replacements for planned retirements, with the intent being to control the overtime to a manageable level where it's appropriate to use it, as opposed to have it run up like it did in 2013. Vehicle replacement schedule was discussed. One of the things that Chief is bringing with him from his time in Florida, he showed the board what's called a rescue pumper, which is a hybrid vehicle that has both some engine capabilities as well as ambulance capabilities combined into one. It's sort of a combo engine EMT with full transport capabilities. It does have some limitations. For example, it doesn't carry enough water.
Does it look anything like a transformer?
Maybe.
Don't slow him down.
Well, the takeaway from all of that is that a vehicle like that would cost $450,000 versus $600,000 for an engine. And there are some things that you could do with it that might make a lot of sense. For example, Station 14 doesn't have a medic unit. So if we put one of these rescue pumpers there, it would sort of solve that problem at a lower cost. A lot of these things, but it was very out-of-the-box thinking kind of stuff from the chief, and the boards all appreciated the effort and some very positive comments there. And last thing was response times, and there's still a lot of focus on turnout time. The west side of the fire protection district is more problematic just because of density and resources, but that one again continues to be focused on, as well as some of the training and who's taking units out and so forth and so on. I appreciate your indulgence. I know there was a lot of information. I was trying to go quickly, but I think it's pertinent for what we're doing in terms of oversight of that department. So thank you.
Councilmember Cole.
Well, I can't follow that. Last Monday and Tuesday afternoons, I took the mental health first aid 8-hour training that's provided by Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health, and I highly recommend it to the rest of council if you haven't done it, and anybody watching or who's here tonight. The next training will be on April 29th. It's a 8-hour one. Lunch is provided, so that's included in the cost. It's $45 when they provide lunch, but you can get information from Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health. Last Wednesday, I attended the Peak Academy, which the City of Denver is already implementing, and I believe Mike Broughton has also attended that training.
Which one?
Peak Academy. It's on employee improvement, self-improvement kinds of things. Since the presenters emphasize the values of employees rather than supervisors initiating the process, I hope that we'll get more people below the department chair level to attend that. Last Friday, at the Greater Littleton Youth Initiative meeting, there was an incredible presentation by Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health and LPS and a couple other groups on the Arapahoe High School shooting. What happened, how the various agencies worked together addressing the immediate event, the way they phased in student return and working with the parents and the teachers and so forth. They talked about the short term, the long term, and the long term is forever impact in some respects on the people who were affected by that. I think council might like to see that presentation, even though it's tangential. And the presenter said they would be willing, that they're willing to present to other people. So something maybe to think about. So, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
Thank you. I've got a couple things. Last week, some members of council, myself included, went to the National League of Cities in D.C., and I think clearly the message was that the system may be broken at levels above, certainly above state and into the federal area, and in some cases broken at the state level, but they seem to be really working well across the country at the municipal level, because that's the point at which most services are provided. And that seemed to be a message, no matter who I talked to, no matter what municipality that they were with, they understood that their dependence on the ability of the feds basically to do anything or support anything was becoming more and more limited. That was a takeaway for me. And then tonight, along those lines, two items that we passed in really no discussion, I think are great examples of how we do it here. And one was to accept the RTD assisted funding for the shopping cart and ensuring that the shopping cart maintains viable for the next year. That's huge to so many members of this community, and it just flew by because we all agree on it. But that matters, and that's an example of that. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for the work that went into that, and certainly for the folks that need that help. You know, it's not stopping. And the second one that just flew by was the police department's request for some additional funding to work with the school district to fund additional SROs. This is huge. This is something that has been needed for several years. I know the new chief came in with a real desire to work in that area. I'm speaking for him, but I know that the budget was not the time that he was ready to present that because he had to work with the school district in order to put it all together. I'm so glad that starting tonight, we're going to see additional school resource officers as soon as they can hire them and get them out there and replace the officers on the street. But this is huge. It's something that the community expects, and we just did it without any real comment. Those are two examples how it works and why it works at the local level. And then finally, just regarding the issue of executive sessions and a public vote for the issues in 301, I read that a little differently, but it raises the point. And we had a lot of discussion about the process behind minutes. We need to have some discussion about the process by which we as a council are involved in liability settlements or any kinds of settlements, because ultimately the money has to be approved. It's a financial issue. So I see that as just to continue on what Jerry said, it's something that we just need to have a similar process in place, because that is one of our responsibilities, I think. And that has nothing to do with the authority of legal counsel. It has to do with moving taxpayers' money. So I hope we can work with that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. A few comments and that I want to have as some cleanup. But first item is a reminder to council, Thursday morning, 7:30 to 9 at the Littleton Englewood Wastewater Treatment Plant. We're going to be receiving an update on the capital plan as well as compliance issues. So be present, and at least some edibles will be served. Pun. Okay, got it.
Is that your attempt at a joke?
Yes, attempt. Second is to staff, looking for when that certification comes back on the minutes, that the journal entries with regard to votes and the yeas and nays be included with that, would be something I would be looking for. So as far as that process, to make sure that action component as well as those specific votes are included in that feedback loop. Just want to make sure that that's clear on that side.
We can do that.
Yeah. Third item, this is a future calendar item for caucus night when it does occur in 2016. in the past, I know we went through some of that, and I know that some of us were able to possibly get to the latter part of caucus that evening because we expedited it, but we don't necessarily have to cancel our meeting that night, but we could move it up. Related to that is council. On our current calendar, we're showing nothing on April 1 and April 8th. So next week, we may want to have that as a special session so we can take a vote on canceling a regular meeting.
Don't need to do that.
Okay. I was just trying a question that was out there. And
Mayor, if I may, we are attempting to see if we can get something on the 8th on a study session, but it's an outside guess. So if we can, we'll let you know as soon as possible, just waiting to hear back.
Yeah, and it was the footnote there was stay tuned.
Oh, sorry.
To the council. So wanted to make sure that was out there. Between the Rocky Mountain City Summit, which was the Tuesday before the National League of Cities Conference, amazing levels of input for us to consider and ideas to possibly bring to staff, and we may have other items that will come up. So those are there. And then just to add to what Mayor Pro Tem Beckman mentioned about our consent agenda item tonight, things are done at the local level and jurisdictions work together, and in addition to the school resource officers, which is a co-funded program with the Littleton Public Schools, so that's wonderful. But we also have the intergovernmental agreements, and across Colorado, municipalities working with municipalities, districts working with districts. We are in a wonderful environment where none of our communities have walls around. Where we look for a lot of cooperation that occurs, and that's really strong here, and isn't one of those things that necessarily comes up in other municipalities in some other states. And so I wanted to echo what Mayor Pro Tem Beckman mentioned on that. And with that, we're adjourned.